in last class we were talking about Gibbs free energy, correct? We have defined, I'll just give you a quick review, and we will just recall that particular concept quickly, and let's understand. We defined G is equals to H minus Ts, that we defined. Now as we have said that this Gibbs free energy, that is an state function, that is an extensive property, so I can define its exact differential, which will be dg is equals to dh minus t ds minus s dt, that we can define. Now as we are taking this for very small change, which means whatever that change is, that can be considered as reversible in nature. Also we know that H we can define as E plus PV, that we can write. So dH here I will write it as dE plus PdV plus VdP, correct? That we can write. Now let's put this value in this expression, given expression dg, it will come out to be dh, that I can write as dE plus PdV plus VdP minus TDS minus SDT, that we can write. Next thing, E, internal energy, that is also an state function. I can define dE value. dE value, how I am going to define? dE, give me one minute. So dE I can write as dq, that dq it will be reversible only, right? Even if you don't write, that is also fine. Plus here minus pdv, or I can write dE, that is equals to dq plus dw. dw we know that will be minus p external dv. Let's put all these values again in the given expression. I can write dg, that can be written as dq, or simply dq reversible I write, plus minus of p external dv plus pdv plus vdp minus tds minus sdt, that I can write. Now first of all, this, sorry, here this to this, they will get cancelled out, right? Now we know that we have defined entropy, ds we have defined, ds we have defined as dq reversible upon t. So dq reversible again I can write as sdt, or here dq reversible I can define as ds into t, correct? So dq reversible to t ds, that will get cancelled out, isn't that right? Correct. So again this expression for dg I can write as dg will come out to be vdp minus sdt. Is that correct? That is the expression we have obtained previously, correct, in last class. Up to here I suppose there was no doubt. Now I can take this expression in order to define Gibbs free energy change in various processes. Let's say I start with isothermal. I'll take only one, remaining you define by yourself, okay? So again, if I write dg is equals to vdp minus what we are writing, sdt, correct, minus sdt. Now for reversible isothermal process, for reversible isothermal process, what we are going to say? See, dt will be 0 first of all, correct? So dg, that will come out to be v dp. I can integrate it from g1 to g2, and here p1 to p2, that we can write. This will give us delta g coming out to be v volume, that we can write as nRT by p dp from p1 to p2, that we can write. This again I can write as delta g, it will be coming out to be n, r and t. All these three are constant only, correct? So n, r, t, directly I can integrate and I can write the value as ln p2 by p1, which also I can write as it is isothermal process, p1 v1 is equals to p2 v2, that we can write. Is that correct or not? p1 v1 is equals to p2 v2, so I can write it as nRT ln v1 by v2, or also I can write it as minus nRT ln v2 by v1. This minus nRT ln v2 by v1, this is what? This is minus of work done in reversible isothermal process, if you remember. Is that correct or not? That we have defined already, correct? So what I can write? Delta G, that will be minus of work done by system. Try to remember this expression, that is very important. Okay, now let's take this Gibbs free energy function in order to define spontaneity of a process. So here Gibbs free energy we have defined, that is work done by system, correct? So if we can say here, I'll write it in words, to try to visualize this particular part. Okay, the process is called as spontaneous if it occurs on its own, that is, it occurs without any external source of energy. Now if a process is happening without any external source of energy, for example, this is a table, let's say, and there is this object in your hand, let's say this is a person holding this object. Now if you remove the normal reaction, what will happen? This object, it will fall down, which means this system, it will be doing work, means work done, it will come out to be negative. Is that correct or not? So simple as that. Most important thing, a process is said to be is called spontaneous only if delta G, Gibbs free energy change, comes out to be negative. Also here we defined with the help of this that at constant temperature we defined delta G comes out to be, or delta G naught comes out to be delta H naught minus T delta S naught. We have realized that most of the spontaneous process they are exothermic in nature, means delta H will be negative if entropy change is negligible. Or we have defined that if entropy increases, that leads to, see, entropy change for universe for almost every process, because we say that perfectly reversible process doesn't exist. So entropy change, that will always be positive entropy change for universe, correct, particularly for irreversible process, and most of the processes they are irreversible only. So if entropy increases process, it will occur on its own, because entropy of universe, it always increases, correct. So here I could take these expressions and we can define. See, this is an important thing we have defined here, that in order to be spontaneous, a process to be spontaneous in nature, we say that it's Gibbs free energy change for that particular process, it must be come out as a negative value, means system that need to do the work done by system, that must be negative. Is that clear? Any confusion, any doubt? Correct. Now we can define various conditions where delta G can be negative. Okay. Yes, Linga.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, can you please explain once again why delta G must be negative, sir, for spontaneity?
See, let's say you are right now you are holding some object in your hand. Okay. You just put it on mute. I'll explain. Okay. Now, if you are holding some object in your hand and you release the normal reaction due to your fingers, what will happen? It will fall down due to the action of gravity. Spontaneously it is falling down. You are not supplying any external source of energy. You are not doing any extra work. No external force is applied. There is a self-driving force for that process to move in a particular direction, means falling down. Correct. Now, what was system in this process? That object in your hand, that was system. Now that system, it is doing some work. What is the work done by the system? That is minus mgh. We are writing it as minus mgh, not mgh. Correct. So work done is coming out to be a negative value, means whenever system is doing work, then the process is said to be spontaneous in nature. Okay.
Sir, सुना नहीं सही से.
See, I'll say it again. I'll say it again, that if you are holding some object in your hand, just try to visualize it. Okay. You are having some object in your hand. If you remove the normal reaction due to your hand, what will happen? That object, it will fall down. It will fall down, correct, due to the action of gravity. That here you don't need to supply any external energy for that process, it will occur on its own. In that process, this is your object, whatever the piece you are holding in your hand, that will be the system in this process. Now this system itself is doing work. How much work? We write minus mgh. Work done is coming out to be negative, or simply we say that work is being done by the system. So if system is doing work, process will be spontaneous. Let's take one chemical example here. If you are having, let's say, dilute HCl in a container. If you place some zinc granules, I write zinc granules, what will happen? This zinc will react with HCl to give you Zn plus 2 ions, or simply ZnCl2. I can write aqueous, which can be written as Zn plus 2 plus 2Cl negative, plus hydrogen gas, it will get liberated. Now if it was a closed container, let's suppose if it was a closed container, that hydrogen gas liberated that hydrogen gas which will liberate, that will do work. Means this system, it is doing some work. That process, it is spontaneous. Correct? You are not supplying any external energy. No external force is being supplied to the system. Is that clear? That kind of process is called as spontaneous, where delta G will be coming out to be negative. Means work done by the system will be, means work is done by the system, we can say. Is that clear? So various conditions I am going to take where a process can be spontaneous in nature. Okay, so I will start with different cases here. Case 1. Case 1. Delta H or delta H naught. Whenever I write this delta H directly, you can consider even it as delta H naught. When I will start thermochemistry, we will further clarify this particular part, that when you have to write delta H and when you have to write delta H naught. Okay, so delta H, if it is negative, if delta H is negative and delta S is positive. If I take this particular case, correct? So I can write delta G is equals to delta H minus T delta S. If I plot a curve of delta G versus temperature, see delta G versus temperature, considering delta S, that is given as negative, delta S is given as positive. Delta G we are taking on y-axis and temperature we are taking on x-axis, let's say. Correct? Doesn't this equation looks familiar to you? Y is equals to C plus mx. That is equation of straight line. That is equation of straight line. Yes or no? Correct? Now here on y-axis we have taken delta G, x-axis we have taken temperature. So C is what? Intercept on y-axis. I can write here C will be what? Intercept on y-axis. C is intercept on y-axis, which is delta H. Correct? And in case 1, delta H we have taken as negative value. Correct? Then I take slope M, that is what? Slope of line. Slope of the line, which we can write as, in this case, what will be the slope? Y is equals to mx plus c. So m is coming out to be minus delta S. Isn't that right? And delta S we have defined. Delta S is what? Positive. So slope of the line, that will come out to be negative once again. So if I have to plot delta G versus the temperature, equation of straight line is there. You can plot the equation, or you can plot the straight line, intercept on y-axis, that is a negative value, any random negative value you can take. That should be mentioned in the question, or you can find out if a chemical change is given and its energetics are given. So delta H, that is negative, intercept on y-axis, slope is coming out to be negative. I can write this process in this manner. Is that correct or not? Now tell me, for any temperature I have started from 0. Correct? Temperature cannot be negative. So tell me about this particular chemical change. See, whether it will occur or not at a given temperature, that is another thing, and with what rate it will occur, that is another thing. We are just trying to figure out whether that will be spontaneous or not. That we want to figure out. So delta G at any temperature, value of delta G at any temperature you check, let's say 300 Kelvin or 400 Kelvin or 500 Kelvin or any temperature, that is coming out to be what? A negative value? Yes or no? That is coming out to be a negative value. So Gibbs free energy for such kind of case, that will always come out to be negative. And I could write clearly from the graph itself, you can see the process in this case process will always be spontaneous. Yes or no? Tell me quickly. Process will always be spontaneous in nature. Isn't that right? Correct only. Make one star mark here, that if such kind of case comes in front of you, the process, it will always come out to be spontaneous. I'll write one such example. If I write, let's say, carbon as graphite, that is solid, plus half of O2 gas, giving you CO, carbon monoxide gas. Delta H I write as minus 58.5 kilocalorie per mole. Delta H is negative. Entropy change, delta S. Can we write delta S for this process? Delta S for this process, whether that will be positive or negative, that we can predict. Reactant side, half mole of gas, product side 1 mole of gas. So entropy, that is increasing, delta S is positive. So this curve you can write for formation of carbon monoxide. See, this will be very important when I will discuss metallurgy or simply the aluminum diagram. Okay, now this case is clear. Any confusion, any doubt? I suppose yes, Ashish Kumar. Yes. I don't know, it is not showing to allow to record the video. That option is not coming, Buddhav, I'm sorry. Don't worry, I'm recording this video, I'll share it with you. It is coming for everyone else. Do you have any doubt, anyone? Actually, I am using phone, sir. Okay, no problem. So, any doubt or any confusion in this particular case? Sure thing to do. Okay. I suppose not. Let's take another case. Okay, this is case 1, and try to remember these cases, different cases. Okay, now I'll write 3 different cases. You are going to figure out when a process will be spontaneous. Okay, for those cases, and I'll discuss them in detail. Case 2. Case 2. Case 2 I will write as let's say delta H again coming out to be negative. At the same time delta S is also negative. Okay, we are going to figure out whether the process will be spontaneous or not. That you can do. That is case 2. Next, case 3, I write delta H. Now let's say positive, delta S is negative. Case 4, let's say delta H is positive and delta S is also positive. 3 cases, I'll give you 3 minutes. Okay, just go through it quickly. You are saying spontaneous. How they will be spontaneous, beta? Just check again. Here we haven't mentioned spontaneous. Always, no matter any temperature you take, two, three non-spontaneous, fourth spontaneous. No beta, you have to define conditions. See how to do that. Let's understand. These are the basic things which are going. See, guys, you have to define the conditions when they will be spontaneous. It's not like you are saying 2, 3 non-spontaneous, fourth one will be spontaneous. You cannot say directly. See, these are the basic things which will help us in other chapters so that we can define favorable conditions for a given process. For example, adsorption of a gas on a solid surface, or solubility of gas, solution chapter when we are going to start, or surface chemistry when we will start. These things, they are going to help us, or metallurgy when we will discuss. At that time, these cases or these conditions, they are going to help us to find out whether a process it will occur or not, or what will be its favorable condition. For example, let's say I start with case 2. Okay, let's say we start with the case 2. Case 2 is given as, I take again case 2, delta H. 3 is spontaneous when H plus T delta. अभी discuss कर लेते हैं बेटा. Case 2, delta H I am taking as negative, and delta S also we are taking as negative value. That is case 2. Okay, so here I write delta G is equals to delta H minus T delta S. Y is equals to mx plus c. Again, let's say I just try to put this plot, or just try to plot this straight line on delta G versus temperature axis. Okay, now y is equals to mx plus c. C is given as what? This is the intercept on y axis, that is negative. Slope of the line delta S is negative. Delta S is negative, so slope minus delta S, that will come out to be a positive value. So I can plot this as this straight line. Is that correct or not? Or I can extend this one. In this manner. Is that correct or not? Any confusion, any doubt? So somewhere here, let's say it will become 0 and then it will become positive. So a process is said to be spontaneous. Here, in order to define the spontaneity, I'll just again use these 3 statements and try to remember them. If delta G is negative, or simply we write delta G is less than 0. Correct? process is spontaneous. First thing. Second, we write if delta G is equals to 0, we will write process is at equilibrium, means rate in forward direction and backward direction will be same. The process, it will be going in forward direction as well as in backward direction. It is moving in both direction by same driving force. Okay. Third, again I write if delta G is equals to positive or simply delta G greater than 0, then we will say process is non-spontaneous. Isn't that right? Any confusion, any doubt? Correct. Now think that for this case 2, delta H is negative. What is the use of graph? We can know directly, you can know directly, yes, but graph help us to figure that thing out quickly within some minute, within some seconds. Okay, you can directly plot in straight line. You are math student after all, right? So here delta H I am writing negative, delta S will be negative, so overall this value it will come out to be positive. What we want, delta G to be negative. So for this case 2, let's say I write for delta G to be negative. See, delta G we are writing as delta H minus T delta S. This term we are saying this is negative. This whole term that is coming out to be positive, which means magnitude of this value, if it is coming out to be greater than this value, then this overall term it will come out to be negative. Correct. So I can write for delta G to be negative, magnitude of delta H, magnitude I am writing, mod of delta H. Is that clear? Magnitude of delta H must be greater than T delta S. Is that clear? Or simply I can write magnitude of T delta S. Temperature is an absolute value, so I can write if temperature is less than magnitude of delta H divided by mod of delta S. For this case, if that means delta G will be negative and process will be spontaneous. That we can write. Any confusion, any doubt? Correct. Which I can observe in the graph as well. You were asking, no, what is the use of graph? You see, this is that temperature. This is the temperature. I'll just write the value of this temperature when delta G becomes 0. When delta G will become 0, let's first calculate that and then we figure out. So I can write for delta G to be 0, I can write mod of delta H should be equals to T delta S. This implies temperature, this temperature, mod of delta H by delta S. At this temperature, I can write at this temperature delta G will be 0. That is, equilibrium will be achieved. Is that correct or not? So So that temperature we can define here in the curve. This temperature I can define as delta H by delta S, mode of delta H by delta S. Is that correct or not? This will be the temperature. Now what we are saying, below this temperature, any temperature if I take, let's say I take this temperature is less than this given temperature. At this temperature if I check delta G value, this delta G value, it is coming out to be what? This is on y-axis, delta G is there, delta G, isn't it coming out to be negative? Let's take another temperature. If I take this temperature, at this temperature delta G, again it is coming out to be negative, yes or no? So we can clearly see from the graph that below this particular temperature process, the given process, it will always be spontaneous. Understood? Now at the temperature when T is equals to delta H upon delta S, or mode of delta H upon mode of delta S, delta G will be coming out to be 0. This is the temperature at which equilibrium will be achieved. For this process, what will be that temperature? We say that this temperature here. For another process, let's say I have assumed these are the temperature at which equilibrium will be achieved. Now any temperature above, I can write, if temperature is greater than delta H upon delta S, put this value in the expression of delta G is equals to delta H minus T delta S. If temperature is greater than this delta G, it will come out to be greater than 0. Say yes or no. Correct? That is, we can write, that is, process will be non-spontaneous. What do we understand by non-spontaneous? Let's take one example. Say I write a process A giving you B, okay, and that T equilibrium I can write this temperature, this I can write as T equilibrium. Let's say I write T equilibrium to be 500 Kelvin. Let's say T equilibrium is 500 Kelvin. What is the process I am writing? I am writing A to B, correct? So below 500 Kelvin, A will automatically, or A will always get converted into B, or let's say I write the whole reaction as B plus C. Let's say A is dissociating, or A plus B giving you C. थोड़ा उल्टा लिख देते हैं. Let's say A or C plus A giving you B. Let's say I take this equation. So we can say below 500 Kelvin, A and C will combine to give B without any external source of energy, which means that reaction, it will occur on its own. Is that clear? At 500 Kelvin, no matter whatever happens, we say that equilibrium, it will be achieved. Means reaction in forward direction, or rate of reaction in forward direction and backward direction will become same, or simply we will say that whatever the amount of C and A are getting combining to form B, the same way that amount of C and A will be formed by decomposition of B, which means process, it will start to move in backward direction also, means equilibrium point will be achieved. Correct? Now above 500 Kelvin, what will happen? If A, B and C both are present in container, above 500 Kelvin, if A, B and C both are present in the container, let's say I take this equation separately here. A plus C giving you B, and I write T equilibrium to be 500 Kelvin. Okay, now if I have taken a container in which both A, B and C are present, let's say A, B and C, all three species are there. Now I will try to write a few statements and try to put focus on these three statements. First statement, below 500 Kelvin, A and C will combine to form B. Below 500 Kelvin, A and C, they will combine to form B spontaneously. Means without any external source of energy. You don't need to provide any external energy. Is that clear? Second statement I am writing, at 500 Kelvin, at 500 Kelvin, rate of formation of B will be same as that of rate of decomposition or rate of consumption of B. I can write that is equilibrium will be achieved. If equilibrium is achieved, which means delta G is equals to 0 at 500 Kelvin. Correct? Third statement I am writing that above 500 Kelvin. Now above 500 Kelvin, what will happen? Process, it will become non-spontaneous. See, I have told you that delta G is a state function for a particular process. Let's say P to Q. If delta G is equals to X, then Q to P for the same condition, at the same condition, delta G will be coming out to be minus of X. Means above 500 Kelvin, if delta G for formation of B from C and A, if it is coming out to be positive, which means delta G for formation of C and A from B, that will come out to be negative, which means process, it will become non-spontaneous in forward direction, but it will become spontaneous in backward direction, which means there will be no formation of B, but B, it will start to decompose in order to give C and A. Isn't that right? That we can say. So above 500 Kelvin, this process, I'll just write C plus A giving you B. This process will become non-spontaneous. Correct? Because delta G, it will become positive. It will become non-spontaneous. Correct? Because delta G, it will become greater than 0. Correct? At the same time, we can say the process B giving you A plus C, means decomposition of B, will become spontaneous, because delta G for B giving you A plus C, that will become negative. Is that correct or not? Which we can define from here, that P to Q, if delta G is equals to X at a given condition or for the same parameters, Q to P delta G will be minus of X. So if for delta G, for C plus A giving you B, delta G is positive, which means B giving you A plus C, delta G will be negative, because delta G, it is a state function. Isn't that right? So we can say above 500 Kelvin, A plus C giving you B, it will become non-spontaneous, and B giving you A plus C, it will become spontaneous. Means whatever B is present in the container, it will start to dissociate to give you A and C. Is that clear? Any confusion, any doubt? These three statements just keep in your mind, that how to define conditions for a process to be spontaneous or non-spontaneous. Again, we can look at the graph. See here, above this temperature, you take any particular temperature. Let's say I take this temperature. At this temperature, delta G, it will be coming out to be what? Positive or not? Non-zero, positive value. Is that correct or not? Means if delta G, this is the graph we have made for A plus B giving you C. Is that clear? So this delta G for this particular process, it will come out to be positive, which means process, it will become non-spontaneous. Now if you have to, at that temperature also, if you want to convert A and B into C, then you need to supply energy externally. You have to do work. Is that clear? Any confusion, any doubt?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, does this graph correspond to some work like isothermal or isochoric, like that?
See, that you have to define. That you have to define, because whatever the conditions will be given, according to that only you can plot the curve. No, that I have defined for constant temperature right now. Remaining conditions.
Sir, and one more thing, sir.
Yes.
Sir.
Yes. Say.
Hey, we're not coming ready.
Any other doubt?
Sir?
Yes. Any other doubt?
Sir, for isothermal process, but delta G change in and Gibbs free energy will be minus of 410, no, sir?
Yes. Work done by
And
system.
You said when I am carrying a ball, and if I am leaving the ball to fall to ground, then
See.
work done by the system is negative.
Yes.
Then if
It
that
should
is
come
the
out
case,
with a
then
negative sign
there
itself.
minus of minus will become plus.
No. It's not in that way. Basically, it is work done by the system. That should be negative. That's what we are saying. Basically, there you are taking only work done. Okay. So that work done you are taking according to, I have told you that these sign conventions in physics and chemistry we take differently. Isn't that right? So the overall work done should be done, or simply I can put it in simple words as if the system is doing work. Are you getting this line? If system
Yes,
is
sir.
doing work without any external source of energy, then process, it will be spontaneous. First statement. Second statement I can put in simple words as if delta G for the given process is negative, then process will be spontaneous. As simple as that.
sir, but for isothermal process, delta G is equal to minus of W work.
Why you have to make
Then
things
if
complicated if you are getting that part in simple words? I'm just asking in out of curiosity that if I know, see, I have given you two simple statements, right? There is no exception in those two statements. Any process, for any process you can apply those statements. We are just saying if system is doing work, process will be spontaneous without any external source of energy. Second, if delta G is equals to negative or delta G comes out to be less than 0, then process will be spontaneous. Any of these two conditions you can apply. Better I will say if you apply delta G is less than 0. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now I would like to take one example for this particular type of process. We know combining metals with oxygen, that will be an exothermic process. Generally those processes, they are spontaneous at normal conditions, right? For example, rusting of iron or that formation of oxide layer on magnesium or aluminum surfaces, right, or sodium surfaces. So if I take one particular process, let's say Fe solid plus half of O2 gas giving you, I am writing FeO solid. You can even write Fe2O3 solid, any process you take. Let's say I start with this one. Now for this process I will write delta H, that is negative, that we know. Delta H is negative, that we know. Delta S can we figure out? Delta S will be what? Delta S, it is decreasing. Left hand side half mole of gas, right hand side 0 moles of gas. Isn't that right? Correct. So delta S, it will be coming out to be negative. So this process, it will be an example of this case too. Correct. Means if we supply heat to the metal oxide, at some point the process, it will reach the equilibrium, and then beyond that temperature process, it will start to move in backward direction. Is that clear? After this T equilibrium, we say process, it will start to move in backward direction. Means if we reach that T equilibrium, we can write above T equilibrium, this process, it will start to move in backward direction. Means that metal oxide, it will get converted into metal, and this oxygen, it will get liberated. Say yes or no. Correct only. Now for what kind of metal oxide we can use this concept to extract metal which have lower value of T equilibrium. Is that correct or not? Example I can write here. For example, copper, mercury, silver, etc. Is that correct? For copper and mercury, we go for auto reduction process, if you have heard of that. Self reduction or auto reduction. These metal oxide, on heating, they will get converted into their metallic form. Is that clear? Any confusion, any doubt? This is significance of discussing spontaneity for this case. Clear? Again, when I will start discussing the Sellingham diagram, I will take this process once again in different cases or different example for this kind of reactions or this kind of processes I will take. Is it clear to everyone? Okay, so let's move on towards our next cases. Now can you do the same for case 3 and case 4? You are going to define exactly the same way. See, I have taken case 2 from here, case 2, this is also case 2, and this is also case 2. Okay, so you just try to define the same thing for case 3 and case 4. Now you give me your answers that when those cases, case 3 and case 4, will be spontaneous and non-spontaneous. Okay, now again I will give you let's say for those two cases I'll give you 5 minutes. Just go through them quickly. Okay, and give me the answers. Yes, Adarsh. Now, is it clear to you what is the importance of these graphs? Adarsh, can you hear me? Okay. See, graphs are very important. And being a mathematics student, you should appreciate what graphs can do. See, what graphs can do, equation cannot. You'll understand slowly. Okay. Now, just go through case 3 and case 4 quickly. Try to define it by yourself, because if I will be defining, you will grasp it as a story which you will forget after some time. Some of you might forget it after 2 days, some of you might forget it after 1 week or 1 month, but ultimately you are going to forget it until and unless you are doing it by yourself. If you are doing it by yourself for a single time itself, you will remember it for forever. Case 3 is non-spontaneous. What was case 3? I don't remember.
In case 3, it will always be non-spontaneous. In case 4, for t greater than delta h by delta s, it will be spontaneous. For t equals to delta h by delta s,
Is this
it
the
will
case
be
3?
at equilibrium, and for t less than delta h by delta s, it will be non-spontaneous.
Very good. I can write always non-spontaneous.
Yes.
Always non-spontaneous I can write directly. How I can say? If I plot the curve delta G versus temperature, delta H is coming out to be positive, so intercept on y-axis, that will be the positive value, any positive value I am taking. Delta S is negative, which means slope of the line, that will be coming out to be positive. So if I plot this kind of curve, we are going to obtain. Now we can clearly see at any temperature, you take any temperature, delta G, it will always come out to be positive. Yes or no? Correct? Now case 4, if I take, case 4, if delta H is positive and delta S is also positive, correct, then I'd like to take this curve first. Delta G versus temperature. Delta G versus temperature. Delta H is positive, slope of the line means intercept on y-axis, that is positive. Now slope of the line, delta S is positive, so slope will be coming out to be negative, which means I can plot this curve in this manner. This is T equilibrium. Below this temperature means I can write directly. If I write, that will be fine for you. You can calculate that value, right? If T is less than delta H, mod of delta H by mod of delta S, delta G will be greater than 0, means process will be non-spontaneous. First. Second, I can write if T is equals to delta H by delta S, I can write delta G will be 0, means equilibrium will be achieved, correct? And third, again if I write if temperature is greater than mod of delta H by delta S, delta G will be negative, means it will be spontaneous after that temperature or above that temperature. Is that clear? These cases I suppose are clear to everyone. I don't think there will be any doubt regarding these three cases, correct? Only now how to use these cases, what will be the use of these cases and how we can apply these cases in various different processes so that we can figure out what are the favorable conditions. Okay, so let's say I start with the Ellingham diagram. Up to here I suppose there is no problem, correct? So you can define when a process will be spontaneous, when it will be not. Clear? Now see, I gave you one question. Again I will take that question and I will let you think about that question for 5 minutes. I said about metal oxide or simply ionic oxides. Same thing you can apply for sulfides. Means sulfides, you know, they give precipitates, right? In qualitative analysis we discussed this part. Most of the sulfides, they give you precipitate, most of the time black precipitate, right? So oxides, sulfides, phosphides, nitrides, they do exist in solid state only. I'll just write them here as in question and make star mark on this question. Ionic oxides, sulfides, particularly I'll focus on oxides. Okay, oxides, sulfides, I'm writing sulfides, oxides, nitrides, phosphides. All these ionic oxide, sulfide, nitride, phosphides are stable in solid state. First statement. Second statement, I can also write that
pressure is applied over the thyroid hormone
exist in solid state. You can make another statement from here. Also you can make a statement that don't exist in gaseous state. Etc. Right? This is one of the reason that case 2 which we discussed, that metal oxide, they will decompose beyond a certain temperature into their corresponding metals and oxygen, and that's why most of the time we use metal oxides for pyrometallurgy or simply extraction or for smelting process instead of carbonates or chlorides or halides or sulfides, etc. Clear? Now the question is, why? The question is why? Like we say CO2 gas, we write yes, carbon dioxide. Again it is oxide, carbon dioxide, right? It or carbon monoxide exist in gaseous state, but you will never see calcium oxide in gaseous state, never. The question is why? I gave you this as an homework for you guys. Again I'll give you 5 minutes to think about this question. Okay, just think about it and write your answer in chat. Okay, your time starts now. Yes, Linga.
Sir, I think I will be requiring some more time, sir, but I can tell that delta H and delta S has some role to play in this one, sir. That they will determine such that that process will be spontaneous.
Yes, but how? That's our question, no? Question is, have you gone through periodicity?
Yes, sir.
The next question will be, have you gone through electron gain enthalpy?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember anything about second electron gain enthalpy for any element?
Yes, sir.
What was that? Any particular thing was mentioned during that? First electron gain enthalpy can be endothermic, can be exothermic, depending upon the element. But second electron gain enthalpy, no matter how negative a particular element will be, second electron gain enthalpy, it will be highly endothermic in nature. For oxygen, if you remember, I'll just try to write here. For oxygen gas plus electron O negative gas, if I write delta H is nearly minus 141 kilojoule per mole. First electron gain enthalpy is coming out to be negative, and oxygen is second most electronegative element, that we know. Electronegativity has nothing to do even though, but if I try to write O negative again in gaseous state plus electron giving you O minus 2 in gaseous state, delta H, let's say here I write Eg1, Eg2, that will be around 783 kilojoule per mole. It is a huge endothermic process. Now if you have to form oxide ion, means oxygen in gaseous state plus 2 electron giving you O minus 2 in gaseous state, delta H will be sum of these two. That will be coming out to be a positive value. Entropy change is negligible because you are moving from 1 mole of gas to 1 mole of gas itself. Correct? Entropy change will be almost negligible, and even if it is not negligible in comparison to delta H value, T delta S value, it will be negative. Oh sorry, it will be negligible. Correct? So delta G, it will directly depend upon this delta H value which we are going to obtain, which is coming out to be positive, which means formation of this oxide ion. Formation of oxide ion in gaseous state, it will be a positive value, which means it will be non-spontaneous in nature. That is first part. Correct? So in gaseous state they won't exist. Second thing, why they are stable? They are highly stable in solid state. We know that calcium oxide, it is a highly stable compound. Calcium oxide, magnesium oxide, we call them as refractory material. Now what is refractory material? I'll give you the definition, you try to remember this definition. A substance which can withstand up to very high temperatures is called as refractory material. A substance which can withstand up to very high temperature means, for example, if you are going to make some furnace or kiln, okay, so the inner lining of that furnace, it will be at very high temperature. Tandoor, you know, tandoor, the inner lining of tandoor, it is made from sand or clay, right? Or simply we can say it is made from silica along with the calcium oxide, magnesium oxide. I can write SiO2, but SiO2, it is not an ionic oxide, okay, here it is a covalent solid. So I can write these substances, they can withstand up to very high temperature. That's why inner lining of furnace or kiln, they are generally made of these kind of compounds. The inner lining of tandoor, that is made from silica, correct, because that tandoor, it will be at very high temperature, or some furnace, it will be at very high temperature. So we are saying that on one side we are saying that delta G for formation of oxide ion, that will be coming out to be positive. On the other hand, we are saying an ionic compound or an ionic oxide, this ionic oxide ion, ionic oxide is highly stable against very high temperature, or it can withstand up to very high temperature. Both should be contradictory to each other, correct. This part we have defined that yes, okay, they will not be stable in gaseous state, or they won't exist, or they won't form spontaneously in gaseous state, but in solid state they are highly stable. Reason why? Next question comes here. Now I have given you a vague idea that how to manipulate these things, correct. Now can you try to define that why this calcium oxide or magnesium oxide, they can be used as refractory materials? That is your next question. Now try to define. I guess this time it won't be that difficult because you have this idea, correct. Now you try to define this particular statement. Okay, statement 1 you try to define. Take some time and try to do this. Yes, Jagdish. You can unmute yourself from the right top corner and you can ask your doubt. Yes, Jagdish. You were asking some doubt. Yes, speak. Anyone getting answer, or we are just going to finish the class in this manner only? Are you even trying? Just let me know, even if you are trying. So if you are not trying, either I could explain or we can leave this part here itself and we can move on. नहीं समझ में आ रहा. Which part you are not understanding? Please write in chat because I am unable to understand whatever you are saying. Last class, did we discuss anything about Haber's cycle, Hess law, which I discussed, if you remember, Saturday evening, by any chance, if you remember that part? By any
हाँ, yes,
chance?
sir, याद है.
याद है?
हाँ sir.
Once you try to write Haber's cycle for any oxide you take, magnesium oxide or calcium oxide you take, okay? One particular term delta HR now you have to figure out, right? Heat of reaction. One particular term will be there, that is lattice enthalpy. There will be one particular term, lattice enthalpy will be there. If you will try to write that Haber cycle for formation of calcium oxide, okay? So just check whether delta HR, it will depend upon what particular factors. See, here we have discussed only formation of oxide ions. Now let's talk about formation of calcium oxide, okay, in solid state, and try to find out delta HR. Just try to do that quickly. Just do it. Did you guys try? I'll take this particular part here. I am unable to understand a single word from you. How many times I have to tell you that try to write whatever you are trying to explain in chat. No offense, but I don't get anything from your side. Style, beta, just convey your message through chat. Maybe some network issue is there from your side or my side, I don't understand, but I don't get anything. Try कर रहे हो, okay, no problem, you just give it a try, okay, but be quick.
what to do after
lattice
writing
energy,
this
it will be coming out to be dF plus IE2 EA1 plus EA2. Yes, so just check how many of them are endothermic and how many of them are exothermic, and try to figure out whether overall heat of reaction that is coming out to be exothermic or not.
Positive.
I'll just try to write this. Let's quickly recall this particular part. See here, if I write, let's say I take calcium oxide, Ca solid plus half of O2 gas giving you CaO solid. We are trying to define why calcium oxide will be highly stable, or it can be used as refractory material. Okay, so here if I write delta HR, heat of this reaction, path, this is path 1, part 2 if I take, let's say here calcium in gaseous state, delta H sublimation or enthalpy of atomization. For alkali metals and alkaline earth metals, enthalpy of atomization, it is very low because of poor metallic bonding. This is an endothermic process. I'll just write here endothermic process whose magnitude it will be very low. That is okay. Now next I write here delta H I1 plus I2, or two-step process. You can write delta H I1 then delta H I2. I'll directly write this to be Ca plus 2 in gaseous state. Again, this will also be endothermic. Now ionization enthalpies for alkali metals or alkaline earth metals, that is also very less. Okay, then I come back on oxygen here half of delta H bond dissociation enthalpy. Bond dissociation enthalpy for oxygen is high, and that is also an endothermic process. Okay, so it will give you oxygen in gaseous state. Then I can write O negative in gaseous state, that I can write delta H Eg1, or let's say I try to write it in two different steps. O negative in gaseous state, delta H Eg1, that will be exothermic process, and O negative, these two electrons, they will get distributed here. O minus 2 in gaseous state, here delta H Eg2, that will be endothermic process. Now we are having calcium ion in gaseous state and oxide ion in gaseous state, correct, which I can write here as calcium oxide in solid state, and I will be writing here minus of delta H lattice enthalpy. Now lattice enthalpy for calcium oxide, that is very 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 high value, as we are saying this is refractory material. So delta H will be in huge positive value, that will be in huge positive value, and with a negative sign it will become highly exothermic, right? So this part it will dominate over all these enthalpies. Is that clear? Why? Because lattice energy, if I write clearly, lattice energy, it is directly proportional to charge on cation. Charge on cation is what? Plus 2, correct? Also it is directly proportional to charge on anion. Charge on anion is also coming out to be minus 2. Charge on cation and anion are very high, at the same time lattice energy, I write it is inversely proportional to 1 upon RC plus RA, radius of cation and anion. Now as because of +2 charge, oxide ion radius it will be same. Now as we move from top to bottom, size generally it increases, but at the same time with the help of this +2 charge, contraction in size will be there, means whenever cation formation is there. So lattice energy, magnitude of lattice energy, it will be very high, which will compensate all these different enthalpies. Is that clear? So overall delta HR, overall it will come out to be a negative value. Is that clear? Any confusion, any doubt? Now if it comes out to be a negative value, then what we are going to say? We are going to say that this delta G, which will depend majorly on delta H, heat of reaction, that will be coming out to be negative. So that's why if I try to plot delta G versus T for this kind of curve, delta G versus T, let's say if I plot, it will come out to be, for calcium oxide it will be coming out in this manner, a huge negative delta H value. Delta S we can see that is negative, so slope of the line it will be coming out to be positive, and this will intercept this axis, x-axis, at around, let's say 3500 degrees centigrade or 4000 degrees centigrade, like that, which in order to achieve that temperature or to achieve that high temperature is not possible. And beyond 3500 degrees centigrade or 4000 degrees centigrade, we say that process it will become reversible. So vapors of calcium and oxide, calcium ions and oxide ions we are going to obtain, and oxide ions in gaseous state are highly unstable. They are highly unstable. So basically what we are going to obtain, this process it will start to move in backward direction, which means, and also at that temperature we are not going to obtain solid calcium. What we are going to obtain? We are going to obtain vapors of calcium and either oxygen atoms or oxygen gas. Is that clear? So that's why we say that calcium oxide it won't exist in gaseous state. Is it clear to everyone? Any confusion, any doubt? I suppose this part you have understood, correct? Now this concept we will be using in our next class in order to define Ellingham diagram. Now all of you are having NCERT? Yes, metallurgy chapter will be there, and in metallurgy chapter Ellingham diagram will be given there. Just give a reading, 10-15 minutes it will take. Just read that particular article in metallurgy chapter, not in thermodynamics. In metallurgy chapter that Ellingham diagram will be given. I am going to discuss that Ellingham diagram in next class. Okay, so
నాకు చార్జర్ నా చార్జర్ తీసుకొచ్చి ఇక్కడ పెట్టిండు మొత్తం పోయింది నాది అది కాదు మీరు ఇచ్చి ఒకసారి పార్ట్నర్
so in next class I'll be discussing that Ellingham diagram. You just go through this Ellingham diagram, just give it a reading, okay, and try to understand what they are trying to explain in that diagram and what will be the significance of that diagram. Okay, so I'll see you in next class with the Ellingham diagram.